Hello, my name is Alex Weeman. I'm a third-year occupational therapy capstone student, and I'm here today to talk to you about community reintegration, especially how it pertains to survivors of stroke. So, what exactly is community reintegration? Well, community reintegration is described as the individualized process of returning to social activities and participation in relationships following a stroke or other event. And a major focus of community reintegration is living as independently as possible. The purpose of rehabilitation services is actually to facilitate community reintegration, although sometimes this is limited by outside factors and barriers to reintegration. Community integration is a broad concept that includes a variety of different factors, including people's relationships, their level of independence, and the ability to engage in meaningful activities. In addition to functional and occupational performance, survivors of stroke experience changes in a variety of other areas, such as social roles, participation at home, family environment, work and community participation, leisure engagement, and education or school participation. Other notable components of community integration include spirituality, healthcare access, and housing. When looking at things that can prevent reintegration, they generally fall into two different categories: individual barriers or environmental barriers. Individual barriers that can inhibit reintegration include psychological challenges such as depression and anxiety, cognition, fatigue and physical deficits from stroke, or other conditions or compounding factors such as medical diagnoses or just simply old age. While individual barriers are those personal attributes that come from within us, environmental barriers come from around us. These can include physical barriers such as terrain, long distances, and inaccessible buildings and physical infrastructure, social barriers such as relationship changes, social stigma, and culture. And survivors report that a lack of education about stroke exists among community members, which is another social barrier. And then also limited resource availability, which includes monetary limitations and limited access to healthcare, such as limitations to number of rehabilitation visits per year. Another factor that is strongly associated with reintegration is psychosocial well-being, as challenges such as depression and anxiety can inhibit reintegration. One of the experiences many individuals who have had a stroke report is feeling obsolete within their communities after losing their sense of purpose and ability. This plays a major role in increasing depression and feelings of worthlessness, which are major aspects of mental health concern. A decrease in quality of life following stroke is often due to decreased engagement in previously enjoyed meaningful occupations. These occupations oftentimes had also doubled as coping mechanisms prior to the stroke, leading many survivors to lose their most important methods for coping with trauma. Another psychosocial consideration is self-awareness. Awareness of abilities and deficits is a critical part of community reintegration, and it is one of the primary factors that is associated with successful re-involvement in prior roles and activities. For example, if an individual is unaware of their current deficits or limitations, they may put themselves or others in dangerous situations when engaging in previous activities. However, if they are aware of their abilities and limitations, they might be able to engage in activities in an adapted way while taking appropriate precautions not to harm themselves or those around them. Because this is the case, developing self-awareness through education and self-reflection may help improve reintegration. Some other factors to consider are that survivors and caregivers both need support and education throughout the rehabilitation process as well as afterwards. This is partly because survivors' needs for resources and education change over time. As they grow more aware of their abilities, develop their interests and goals, or change functionally, the things they will need to know will change in order to have the best possible participation. As such, survivors have a need to be treated as individuals to facilitate recovery, as each person's journey will look very unique. Another consideration that ties into this is that resources provided during care and then following rehabilitation need to be culturally specific for improved community reintegration. Culture can be a major barrier to reintegration, as different cultures are supported in very different ways. For example, family structure, religious beliefs, and language are all cultural factors that can differ from person to person and will make access to resources or support very different from person to person. Reintegration of survivors is highly affected by the education and support that caregivers receive. Community reintegration is supposed to be addressed during outpatient therapy, but it is not always fully achieved. Therefore, caregivers become a part of continued rehabilitation delivery following discharge. However, caregivers often have no prior training or education on their new role, making it a challenging and often unmet responsibility. This can lead to unnecessary stagnation in the survivor's recovery, or even possibly future decline in function, leading to worse and worse reintegration outcomes. Additionally, caregivers themselves often experience lower community reintegration due to their new roles. New responsibilities have the effect of limiting their free time, and they choose to stay home with their loved ones to do the best job in that role that they can. Therefore, certain relationships outside the home begin to decline, and caregivers choose to engage less and less in the activities that were previously central in their lives. Now that we have discussed several aspects of community reintegration, we can now look at potential ways to improve it. Most survivors of stroke experience a reduction in participation in previous occupations and life roles. Interventions that have been found to best improve participation in these roles and activities include goal setting, education specifically on condition, abilities, and community resources, social or emotional support, and survivor empowerment. By setting goals, survivors will have a target to focus on and to shape their actions around. This will help clarify which steps they wish to take going forward. Education is essential, as we've discussed, due to familiarizing yourself with your own abilities and limitations to the fullest, and you can then also learn about what resources are available in the community and how they might align with your interests and strengths. Seeking and receiving support from others will further the education aspect of things, but additionally, it will add to your general engagement within a community. Regardless of what the community might be, it is important to find people to surround yourself with to develop a network for continued growth in sharing in life experiences. Survivor empowerment is also important to keep survivors actively involved in a community setting so that they might have a significant voice that's viewed as important and meaningful. Therefore, finding ways to involve survivors in leadership is a great way to improve reintegration. Here are some other potential ways to improve participation, including joining activities. So what are some activities you could join? Within the community, you could join recreation center programs. You could attend events such as concerts and sporting events, volunteer programs, clubs, or faith communities. Another strategy is to utilize community resources to the fullest, such as taking public transportation, visiting accessible parks, or visiting accessible businesses. Another strategy is advocating for disability inclusion. So what should inclusion look like? I say it's having a full presence where non-disabled people are at, having options and the ability to make choices, having recognition for competence, overcoming the quote-unquote disability label, having access to a variety of community environments, and also being able to work or attend school if desired. Also, advocating for a holistic approach to healthcare versus a purely medical approach would be beneficial to improve, or rather remove barriers for survivors to reintegrate into the community. Other strategies include skills training, which is another useful strategy to improve participation in order to support your strengths and engage fully in specific occupations, developing self-determination, advocating for yourself, such as being assertive and making sure your voice, interests, or needs are understood. In other words, just not letting yourself shrink to the background if possible. And utilizing assistive technology and adaptive equipment in a variety of settings is one final way to improve participation. One other element that can improve participation is leisure. Involvement in leisure activity often decreases following a stroke, leading to decreased life satisfaction. Successful involvement in leisure activities, on the other hand, can lead to improved community reintegration. In particular, social leisure activities are especially effective. Engaging in leisure activities with other survivors can further increase reintegration through shared knowledge, a developed sense of belonging, and improved social relationships. Engagement in activities alongside other survivors also leads to improved psychosocial well-being and feelings of hope, and a developed social sphere is a key part of community reintegration. It also provides an opportunity to observe the similarities and wide differences between survivors and how their strokes have affected them, leading to increased hope and perseverance to continue striving for improvement. Several factors of social leisure engagement positively influence well-being, including having positive emotions, finding a sense of purposefulness, contributing to a group or respected organization, or being able to use personal strengths. There are several benefits to improved community reintegration. Many more than I listed here, but these are just a few that I wanted to note. One benefit is improved independence and life skills, which a lot of people are aiming for. Another is reduced feelings of isolation and improved relationships. Increased life satisfaction and social engagement is another big one. And finally, one that I wanted to note was improved access to workplaces through inclusive policies and environments. Thank you for listening, and I hope this has given you ideas and motivation to build your community reintegration. Here are my references, and here are some more. Thanks again.